Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
You're listening to a Zweig Letter Podcast exclusive, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting guru Mark Zweig and his team of expert straight talk in your ear. Mark has more than 30 years of experience helping AEP and environmental firms thrive, and these podcasts deliver his invaluable management, industry, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop professionally, wherever you are.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining Zweig Group Media and the Zweig Letter exclusive interview series. With almost 25 years of continuous coverage of the design industry, the Zweig Letter is a constant in an ever-changing marketplace. We're bringing you some of the best and brightest minds that our industry has to offer. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. David Wantman, president of Wantman Group in West Palm Beach, Florida. David, it's great to have you join us today. Instead of me reading off a litany of things about your firm, and why don't you just tell us a little bit about Wantman Group?
Thanks, Randy. It's a pleasure to be here today. Glad to spend some time with you. Wantman Group, formerly known today as WGI, that's how we do business. We've transitioned from the small family brand to WGI, as I think a lot of our successful predecessors have in this profession. Is nearly 350 professionals doing business primarily in the southeastern United States. The majority of that taking place in the state of Florida. We have about 9 offices today, headquartered in Palm Beach County, where we've been headquartered since 1972, doing work in a wide range of services, transportation, water, sewer, planning, landscape architecture, survey, utility locating. And so we really pride ourselves in being able to provide a full suite of services to just about any client that's in the infrastructure business.
Wow. That's a lot. I mean, it sounds like you guys have your hands in everything. Now, you guys originally, and I know that when your dad first started the company back in 1972, you were primarily doing like civil site development, and then you moved into the survey space, and then you slowly started adding these different services over time.
Yeah, exactly. So the normal evolution for a lot of firms in this space is to start off serving private clients, because that tends to be the easiest type of client for a firm to work for. And so over the period of time, the firms then tend to digress or diverge into more public work. And so just like other firms, the firm started off doing private land development work in southern or southeastern Palm Beach County at a time when the population was very low, certainly well under 1 million people, just a few 100,000. Today it's significantly larger than that. And so when you look at the South Florida population base, it's gone up by a factor of 10. But over the course of time, the way the rules changed and the way the population grew, the firm was challenged with the ability to not only do land development work, but also to do infrastructure work, water and sewer plants to support it, off-site improvements in the terms of roadway improvements. And then I think it was a relatively small leap from doing that work for private developers to then moving on to the departments of transportation, expressway authorities, cities and counties throughout the state. And so today the firm derives, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of its revenue from public-based clients, and the remaining portion is on the private side.
Okay. So, I mean, your arc in history with the firm starts when you were, and I'm just kind of picturing this in my head, starts when you were about 13 years old, coming in and doing some work with the survey group. What's it like working in a very successful family business?
Well, it's been interesting and challenging. As a child, I did start work at the age of 13, and it wasn't voluntary. It was something that I didn't have an option on. The message I got from early on was you're going to do two things. You're going to go to college and you're going to get a job. And I guess the message was you're going to get off my payroll coming from my parents. But the choice I had in school growing up was get involved in after-hour activities or come to the office. And so to the extent I wasn't doing something after hours at school, mostly sports related, I didn't have a choice. And so I showed up at the office. And in summers, I had a full-time job. And during the other parts of the year, I had a part-time job. And yeah, it was everything. It was working on a survey crew. At the time, it was running blueprints. I still have a Leroy set. I learned how to work on ink and Mylar, and started work on a drafting table with a blow dryer to dry the ink. And I don't know that I disliked it, but I didn't like it enough going through college to want to be an engineer. And so I swore all along it's not exciting enough for me. That's not how I see myself, developing, and it's not the career path that I see. And so interestingly enough, I thought, well, I'm going to get out and do something that's a little bit different, maybe on the finance or real estate side. And then as I got into college and had to declare a major, lo and behold, I found myself saying, well, I don't know what college I want to go to. I guess I'll just go to engineering school and see what happens. And so I did, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering almost 30 years ago now. And the minute I got it, I knew it was a mistake. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do now? And for the first 6 months, I didn't do much. And then finally, my dad caught on to it and called me one day and said, what are you doing this weekend? It's kind of a funny story. And I said, I don't know what. And I was still living in a college town. He said, well, I know what you're doing. Start packing. I'm coming up to get you. You're coming home to go to work. And so 6 months later, I found myself working for my father again. And then he had gone through a merger and acquisition and was in the process of selling his ownership. And so a few months after I started with him, I got taken to lunch one day, and the message was, hey, I think I'm going to sell everything, and you may want to go find another place to work. This was 27 years ago. And so at the time, I answered an ad in the newspapers because that's how we found jobs in those days. You answered a classified, and I found myself a week later headed over to the west coast of Florida for an interview. And a week after that, I found myself packing up everything I owned in one car, not even a trailer, and moving to Tampa, Florida. And I stayed there for the next 10 years. What happened next is, within a year, my father started over again. And a year after that, he kept asking me to come back. And I was a little, I guess, tainted at that point because I tell everybody I felt like my gravy train had pulled out of the station and
Right.
I had to go work somewhere else. But I worked at a place that was good to me, a place that I appreciate everything that I learned, and probably one of the most educational experiences I ever could have received was working for somebody else for 10 years. And I think I did a real good job when I worked for that firm. They're still successful today, but I took a tremendous amount of knowledge from them. And when I did finally come back to rejoin my father a decade later, we had 3 people. And, here today, 17 years later, we do $60 million a year in revenue, and we have, nearly 350 people. And so it's been a tremendous push to do everything right. A little plug for Zweig. We use your services. We find the information and the guidance you provide to be tremendously beneficial because we're just one firm in a relatively small area, and we're competing with a tremendously robust and well-financed peer group. And so the information that we can gather to help us make intelligent decisions based on what some of our peers are doing has been tremendously valuable to that growth.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I know I was writing an article the other day, and I was talking about how this is the actual 3rd decade that I've worked in the design industry, and I'm amazed at how much things have changed. And, you and I are probably not terribly far off in age, but the reality is that, it's a lot different this industry is a lot different now in, 2016 than it was in the 90s. And there's just so many new things happening. And I guess, I find it interesting that, you were able to step away from the family business for a while and learn on somebody else's dime, but then come back and not so much rescue your dad, but become a part of the arc of success that you guys have experienced, like you said, in the last 17 years. So I think that's very interesting because there's so much consolidation in this industry. You don't see a lot of legacy ownership in the design industry anymore like you used to see. And as you said, with some of the services that we offer with mergers and acquisitions and ownership transition, we're just not seeing owners or old line engineering and architectural firms handing their firm off to their son or daughter to take over. It just doesn't happen as much anymore.
The business has gotten really large, not just our business, but the profession in general. And so it's not so much that it's a mom and pop profession anymore. While that is the bulk of the firms by number, they certainly don't dominate when it comes from a revenue standpoint. A very small percentage of the firm do a majority of the revenue generation in this space. And so it's an interesting business to be in, because when you're small and you're in that family environment, it's actually a relatively fragile environment. You go from one day being profitable to one day being non-profitable. And I know you look at a lot of different firms and you see just how close to one side of the line those firms are, to the other. And it can easily be one person, one key project that throws them from tremendous profitability to negative cash flow. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And so the small firms probably don't excite too many kids to go into because it's a very fragile environment. And the large firms are just too large for a family member to step in unless they're tremendously good at what they do or have had years of training and guidance to step into a leadership role. There's just so few people that are qualified to run firms like this.
Yeah. No, it's definitely true. So I'm just curious. I mean, when do you feel like? I mean, once you came back to Wantman Group or WGI now, when do you feel like you got your sea legs about you and you felt like you kind of understood what needed to be done?
It's interesting. I knew what needed to be done before I got here. Intuitively, I was very fortunate. Like you said, I grew up in the business, and so the kitchen table, dinner table conversations revolved around, my dad's business. And so I kind of had an idea, and I've been very fortunate that I understand business and finance better than most, I believe. And so when I got here, I knew intuitively what had to happen. What I tremendously underestimated was exactly how hard it was going to be. And I'm not saying it wasn't worth it. I don't know if I'd do it again, though. And so, early on, when you're, and I think to be successful at this, you have to be a little bit ignorant, because if you know exactly how much it's going to hurt, you may not consciously pull the trigger on what you're about to do. And that's true with a lot of people that do a startup sort of thing. And so this wasn't quite a startup. I got a jump start on it. But in order to take it to where it is today, I didn't envision how hard it was going to be. I mean, people say they work 50-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks. Well, I was working 60-hour weeks and then having to do all the things that it takes to grow a firm. It was 60 hours a week of delivering to a client. And then it was payroll and HR and marketing and branding and growth and personnel issues. And, when you're 3 people, it's hard, but it's manageable. When you're 10 or 15 people, it's really, really hard, because all the interesting dynamics of a multi-person office come into play. But there's only 1 or 2 people that are having to deal with every single thing. And so, from 0 to 15 was tough. When you start to get to 50 or 60 people, still a little bit of risk, but you start to realize that you need some help. And so you start to hire people maybe in an overhead function or half technical, half overhead. And it makes it a little bit easier. Between 100 and 200 or 300, a little bit easier, but different challenges. And I think once you surpass the 300 level mark, you start to understand just how important support staff is. So the concerted effort that we've made the last year or so especially has been to get the support staff in place to actually leverage the technical growth. And, everyone says we don't need HR, we don't need IT, we don't need marketing and branding. The reality is you don't if you want to be stagnant. But if you want to do what people at Zweig promote and the successful firms promote, you have to outspend every single one of your competitor tremendously in every single one of those areas. You have to do really well at HR, you have to do really well at IT, and you have to do even better at marketing and branding, because that's what this is about. I mean, it's about taking care of the people. It's about making them feel comfortable in their work environment, to make sure that they're using the latest tools. And, let's face it, engineers, architects, they like technology, and so they want the latest stuff. That's what excites them at the office. And then you got to market and brand all that. You got to let the world know. And that's the challenge. The technical work is easy. It should be easy. It's selling it to everybody else. That's the hard work.
So it seems like, especially at the size that you guys are at, you have had to develop your leadership chops. And what would you say? If somebody were, if you were in a room and just a fly on a wall and someone was talking about your leadership style, what do you think they would say about your style of leadership?
They'll tell you I'm very serious, which I am. I tend to be very serious about what I do, because I take it. I don't take it lightly. There's a lot of people's livelihoods at stake, and it may sound actually a little bit morbid, but I tell people that the decisions we make here at the office when we're working on a project affects people's lives, and not just in a positive way. When we make a mistake, people can lose their lives, and so you have to take what we do very, very seriously. There's a tremendous amount of liability, not just to the firm, but to the professionals that work on a project to do things correctly. And so, yes, I'm very serious about it, because there's nothing more serious than people's lives. But, at the same time, I'm a hands-off leader. I like to hire really good people, point them in the right direction, coach them, and then let them do what they're here to do. And so, the best people that I work with get the least amount of time from me, because, quite frankly, they don't need it. And so, as a leader, my goal is to make sure we're looking for opportunities, that we're continuing to promote the growth. That's absolutely necessary to keep our key personnel engaged. But at the same time, it's not to babysit people. It's not to go around and make sure that you did everything you said you were going to do this week. Eventually, that stuff catches up with you, and the people you work with will say, yeah, it doesn't need to be me that figures it out.
Right.
It happens soon enough.
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, I think it's a Steve Jobs quote. It's that, what you need to do as a leader is hire really smart people and then get the hell out of their way and let them do their job. So, so I think that's great. Well, this is the month of September 2016. We are getting ready for our Hot Firm event, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. I know you'll be there with your team, and rightfully so. Your firm has received numerous awards and accolades, including being a Zweig Group Hot Firm, Best Firm to Work For, and a Marketing Excellence Award winner. And we call that the trifecta. So you guys have a special label that you guys are going to wear when you walk around at this Hot Firm event in Phoenix in 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which is really cool, because you've gotten all three of those. And then, not to be outdone, you guys are also an Inc. 5000 and an E&R list and you're on the E&R list of the top 500 design firms in the United States. What do these awards mean to you personally, and how have they impacted WGI when it comes to both getting new business and attracting great talent? Because to me, at the end of the day, you can leverage that type of success in both of those areas.
Yeah, those are great questions. And again, I'll go back to what I said about IT, HR, marketing, and branding. And so we're focusing on the third leg right now of what differentiates successful firms. And so the awards mean everything, because they lend stability and credibility to a firm. And so when a firm gets an award for fast growth, I tell everybody that's a great firm, because it's a measure of our success. But it's not as important as the Best Firm to Work For award, because that's the one that says, hey, this is a good place to work. And by the way, they're also growing, which means I have potential. And so while we're proud of both of those, the Best Firms to Work For personally means more to me from a leveraging standpoint and from a personal reward standpoint, because I think if it's a good place to work and you attract talent, then the growth will come if you manage it effectively. And so, number one, be a good place to work, and then let the rest fall into place behind that. But when you look at both of those awards, we work really hard to achieve those goals. And so it's not just the fact that we get to put it on our email for a year, or put it on the intranet, or advertise it in publications. It's the fact that people start to believe in the culture. And when you look at the clients say, hey, well, look, it's a good place to work. They're growing. They're one of the largest firms in the country. Well, the important clients, or the clients that conversely don't know a lot about what they do, that's what they're looking for when they hire a professional consultant. They want to know that the people are stable. They want to know that the firm is stable. They want to know that the people are happy, because that's what's gonna take to deliver a successful project for them. And then when you add in, the third part of that, which is the marketing award, that's just, that's what that is us making a commitment to what I said earlier. It's us putting our money where our mouth is, and that is, let's brand it. Let's get it out there. Let's get it on Instagram. Let's get it on Snapchat. Let's get it on social media. Let's make sure that we're attracting the generation of professionals in the workplace. Let's get it in their face. Let's do it constantly. We have someone here that's dedicated to social media full time. That's her job. That's what she does. If you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known what social media was.
5 years ago, for that matter.
Yeah, and then if you would have said, 2 years ago, hey, you're going to dedicate one person to social media, I would have said, well, you mean taking care of our website? And, today I realized just how important it is. It's just as important as having your name on the side of a vehicle or on a billboard or in a news article or, a podcast like we're doing today. I mean, it's a tremendous benefit, and it lends credibility, and that's what sells work and attracts good people.
Yeah. It's kind of one of we call it, when we do the marketing thing, we kind of talk about that whole be everywhere mentality, and in addition to the great engineering work that you guys are doing, you almost have to be everywhere with your brand, which is important. And adding to what you just mentioned about that full-time social media person that you have, and I know that some of your peers, especially in the Florida market, are not that forward thinking. Some are, but some are not. So, and I know that in this industry, in the design industry, it's one of the industries they're slow to incorporate new ideas when it comes to operating and running a business, because invariably you hear the same refrain. That's not how we've always done it, and so it's interesting. But I just recently wrote an article about the gig economy and about the sharing marketplace. And I don't know about you, David. Have you ever used Uber before?
Have I ever used what? I'm sorry?
Uber.
Oh, yeah, I love Uber.
Okay. So, we've got Uber, we've got TaskRabbit, we've got all these programs out there that allow us to, whether it's sharing a ride or Airbnb and getting a rental or whatever. What are your thoughts for this industry specifically of being able to share workers or hire talent for a specific project in the future? I mean, where do you fall in that spectrum of that idea of, I think the coming economy, I think Intuit said that by 2020, 40% of the U.S. workforce will be operating from that perspective. And I'm just curious to see what you think about that.
So it's presenting a very interesting dynamic, and it's a very, very tricky question to answer. The first component of this has existed for years, and that was outsourcing. Can we outsource production or drafting, for lack of a better term, overseas? And to some extent, you see some of it, but I don't run across it more than once or twice a year. And so it hasn't been something that has been predominantly used, or I think, very successfully in delivering a project. We're seeing a tremendous push, and we keep hearing about, new millennials, and today I heard about centennials, which is, I guess, the generation coming up behind. You hear about centennials yet? I see you laughing, yeah. So they're only about 1 million or something folks behind the new millennials as far as being the largest age group now, which I think is everybody under age 18. But every time we go to a conference or some sort of event or some sort of HR gathering, we hear about new millennials. And then the thing we constantly hear from them, we touched on technology, is, where am I going to work? They want to know what their workplace environment's going to be. Is it a nice office, or am I going to be sitting someplace where I'm not comfortable all day? And then the very next question we get is, are the work hours flexible? And then right on the heels of that can we work from home? And so, from someone who had to go to the office, as a young teenager, and didn't get the option to sit at home, it's hard for me to grasp. And when you look at the generation that's been in the business longer than I have, they don't come close to understanding it. And I'm somewhere in the middle, and I'm doing my best to try to find that happy medium. But it's hard because we work in a team environment with a lot of collaboration. And the struggle in the late 90s and the early 2000s were, how do you work share across offices effectively? And so, some of our software providers came out with products that let you share technology and files and make sure that everyone's always working on the latest document. And the transmission speeds got faster and faster and faster to where, you can sit where you're sitting and I can sit where I can sit, and we can collaborate on the drawing or a spreadsheet or calculations real time, just like we're doing, video today. And it works well. We've crossed that hump, but we haven't figured out how to have a team of people, a team's 5, and how to have all 5 people in 5 different locations and 5 different time zones effectively work together, and then come to a meeting with a client and say, okay, here are the 5 people that are working on your project, and have them look at a screen and feel comfortable. And so that's something that this next generation is going to push really hard. And I think as the next generation starts to become our clients, that they'll start to accept lack of a physical presence. And when the client starts to accept it, we'll be forced to deliver a product in that manner. And so you're going to continue to see more of this outsourcing, work at home, and flexible workforce demands, because the generation that's supplying the talent, the human capital, is going to demand it, and we're going to have to adapt to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our thought, and that's kind of the synopsis in this article that I recently wrote for the Zweig letter. That I guess at the end of it, I said change is coming, whether we like it or not.
Sure. Yeah. You can do it the way you've always done it. I can go get some drafting tables and stools and Leroy sets, and let's see how long we survive. In a similar manner, I can take any of the E&R 500 firms that are a fantastic peer network and say, let's see how long you survive when the workforce doesn't want to come to the office and you demand it.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting transition.
It will. It certainly will. Well, listen, before we close out, I did want to mention I had a chance to look at several of your marketing materials. I looked at your WGI Informer newsletter, which I think is an internal newsletter. And I got to say, David, it really looks like you guys know, you work hard, but you guys know how to play hard too and have a lot of fun. Do you want to can you just talk a little bit about that and what stands out in your mind with regard to that? Because it looks like your people are involved in a lot of civic-minded activities. I think there may even be a race team. There are a few other things that you guys do that's kind of cool. And so I'm just curious if you would be able to talk about that, because we don't always see that. Even with firms of your size, we'll see the occasional Instagram photo of a couple of folks getting together, maybe running a half marathon or something like that. And I'm not belittling that effort. I'm just saying that some firms are all in and others really aren't when it comes to that whole idea of work hard, play hard. It seems like you guys have captured the essence of that. Do you want to just speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to, Randy, because it's something that I'm passionate about. It's so vital that the relationships that develop in the workplace translate to activities outside of the workplace. It's not just knowing what your partner's strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to being able to deliver a product to a client. It's knowing what those strengths and weaknesses are and how they communicate outside of the office, and how they relate to people when they're doing something that's completely opposite from what you normally deal with them on. And so those activities, whether it's that marathon, or I think a couple of weeks ago we had a local animal shelter in here, and we brought animals in and we raised some money for them. So it was a benefit to everybody. People got a chance to hang out with some animals that needed some attention and raise some money for a good cause. This week or next week, I believe we have a chocolate food truck coming in, and a guy coming in making all sorts of things with grilled cheese sandwiches or something, but. It's get off a little bit early in the middle of the day, end of the day, celebrate a little bit, see how people react when they're not actually when they let their hair down, they're not working on a project. It lets you bond better with the people that you're with 8 or 10 hours a day. And if you can't develop that bond and that kinship outside of the office, you can't be as successful inside the office. And so it's absolutely vital to success.
Well, man, yeah, I tell you, just looking at it looked like fun, and I'm an adventure kind of guy. I like to go out and do outdoors activities, and I must say, it looks like people there at WGI are really having a great time. And so, I mean, and you guys are doing, I mean, on the balance sheet, you guys are doing great. But, in terms of just a work-life balance, I mean, you guys seem to have it all under control, which I think is a testament to you and your father and the rest of the leadership there at WGI. And I know I lied. I actually have one final question. I know you do have some children. Is there a third generation of Wantmans that are going to be working in the firm? Or
I don't think so. I'm blessed with two lovely daughters. One who's studying physical therapy at the University of Alabama, which drives the gator in me crazy. My youngest daughter says she's pursuing a medical career. And I'm going to be faced with an interesting challenge, and that is, how I actually exit this business one day. But fortunately, I'm young and energetic, and I have a while to think about that. I plan on being here for quite some time.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yes, you are young, and I'd like to think that a lot of us in this age range are going to work into our 70s without pause or concern, just because of technology and the fact that medicine will keep us alive a lot longer. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. Well, I guess the one thing that your daughters will benefit from is that, hey, who knows, you may design or build the next hospital that they work in. So there'll be some tangential relationship there.
They get a kick out of seeing our projects and our vehicles when they're driving around town. Their friends, send them a text message or an Instagram, to get heart back on social media.
Right.
They say, look at the picture. I just saw one of your vehicles somewhere. So it's kind of neat.
That's cool. Well, David, man, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us on the Zweig Letter interview series. I really appreciate that.
Randy, it was fantastic. I'm glad I could do it. It was good to see you. The questions were very insightful, and hopefully a lot of listeners will gain some benefit out of listening to them.
Oh, I'm sure they will. As a reminder, all Zweig Group media programs like this one are available in both podcast and video format for free. For download on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube, just to name a few places. We'd like to thank you for watching this in video or listening to the podcast by offering you a free copy of the Zweig Letter. Just visit info.zweiggroup.com/free TZL. A link to all of this information, including David's contact information, will be in our show notes. And we would love it if you would share this link with a friend. I'm Randy Wilburn, and you've been listening to Zweig Group Media, part of Zweig Group. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter Podcast exclusive. We hope that you can apply Mark's no-holds-barred advice to your daily professional life. For a free transcript of this or any episode of our podcast, please visit info.zweiggroup.com/podcast. If you want more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about finance, HR, and marketing your firm, subscribe to the print or digital version of the Zweig Letter online at zweiggroup.com/publications.